the old alpine style climbing ethic that I discovered quite young with a few friends, and that was a revelation, and I thought, that's it, a style to kind of model your life on, a philosophy. Climbing to me it's not even a sport to me. You can risk your life, and you can risk a livelihood, all material aspects of life and everything, because it dominates everything, doesn't it? It can be obsessional, obviously, but I mean, it's such a powerful, motivating force that although it's nearly killed me, and it's killed a lot of my friends, I do owe it still such a lot, you know? It's my big motivating force. The glacier, it's very historic. One of those high endeavours of mankind, early 20th century, you know, kind of megalomaniacal to want to build a high telefreak up there to get people up to ski. And okay, this idea of accessibility to the mountains, you know, raises quite an interesting point, because as a purist, I don't want people up there unless you can walk up there or something. That industrial side to Sheffield, which I know, which I suppose I escaped from, to re-find it up there again, it's kind of ironic that I find this place up in the mountains, which most people are like, well, let's like blow it up, destroy it, because it's a blot on the landscape. I quite like it. I don't know how people perceive all vandalising the place to make sculptures and things. I'm thinking about once I've made them, do I leave them up or do we dismantle them and put them back in again? To be, you know... In nature, I'd usually just make things that are meant to be destroyed by the next storm, like in Patagonia or something, out of rocks and sticks and things like that, you know. And so there's no trace of nothing. Just like drawing in the sand with a stick, and the tide comes in and washes it away. You've had your fun, but there's no way you can actually offend anybody by leaving tracks. In this place, you could argue tracks are already here, and it's like, look at it, you know. It's like an old factory. I've always wanted to do something up here like this. I've been here quite a few times, finding materials and just wandering around in the mountains, coming off climbs maybe. It's a typical sort of, a typical location for me, I suppose, because it's kind of wild. I like that kind of semi-industrial aspect to it, which is like I began, I suppose. Some of the early painting stuff was in Sheffield, really. And it's ironic as well, in that sense, that you should have that up in the mountains. So recycle stuff again. Man's been here, tried to sort of make a go of it, and usually had to move on and left a mess behind, so I may as well work with it, I suppose. I'm trying to readapt these pieces of metal. I'm not quite sure what function they served at one point. You know, I'm trying to make something else and trying to let the things speak to me and let things flow. So I've got like an organic piece of work coming through in a wacky place on a mountain, the side of a mountain, but made out of scrap metal. which shouldn't be there, right? Ideally, my ideal concept of the mountains. An environment that people can wander in and look at the place and maybe put themselves in a position where they were a long time ago. They imagine what it was like in the 1920s coming up here, you know, another era. And I'm working with material from that era, fashioned by people that were alive then. And maybe there's a power because of that, I don't know. But it's just a totally instinctual piece of art, right? Those pieces came to hand, I just picked something up, and I suppose you get good at doing this stuff. Things slotting together, wired together. There's the form it takes on, and I just have to forget everything and just see what I end up with.
Well, I first turned up here like most people do, with a rucksack and a load of climbing gear and a tent and things like that. And it's still the way I go off on the world to go to other places, and I feel totally at ease with that. You know, I've got everything I need, I don't need any more. Life's uncluttered.
You've got to have a base to be able to operate from. And to me, this is just like a base camp, you're saying, on an expedition. And you organise from here to go away and be efficient, come back, get your act together again. And basically, yeah, I suppose Chamonix has always been that.
There's a nice community feel here as well, amongst the people of the valley, the original people of the valley, and the newcomers like myself. It's very close actually, and there's not many places like that. And we're all more or less linked by one thing: either you were born into these mountains or you came because of them, and that's quite important. I mean, it's a totally essential place on the planet for climbing. It's a bit more like a playground here. It's definitely a place you come and learn how to climb and perfection it. I've developed my artistic lifestyle here while I've lived here. That's the main reason I've stayed in Chamonix, basically. It's not just for the mountains now. The mountains are the reason I came, and the climbing. But I've climbed enough here now maybe to sort of think, well, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of other places that I could easily go and set up shop. I think I started as a kid reading about mountains, never really imagining I'd ever get up there. I was fascinated by the whole thing. The idea of expeditions, the long drawn out sort of affair of getting lost somewhere and coming back and having discovered something, you know.
It's only when I go climbing I find that getting off the ground, defying gravity, I rediscover a movement in the universe that I've always had. And that's brilliant. At least I'm capable of doing something, right? And I think you need that in life to be sure at least you can do something well. I suppose I've become so used to those emotions and sensations that the experience altogether is too fascinating to stop. Yeah, I suppose a climbing junkie in that sense, you know, like, and I know full well there's a danger at the end of it if I'm not careful. But I still feel this need, and people say, haven't you grown out of that yet? So you've got to stop one day, you know.
As far as soloing is concerned, for me it's the ultimate artistic expression I can come up with, actually. I accept the risk, I suppose, but you try and reduce it, obviously, with experience and all, and I'll just try and be realistic about my own abilities, you know, really. You walk in the rain, you're probably going to get wet, you know what I mean? Like, it's a fact of life, you know. The discomfort and danger that go with climbing, and particularly solo climbing, you just got to put up with it. Loads of friends have had bad accidents, you know, rocks on their heads, seracs on top of you. Some survive, some don't, yeah. No, I've lost a lot of friends there, I must admit, yeah. I suppose, yeah, there must have been lots of times you come pretty close to it, but maybe you don't realise how close sometimes.
We were involved in an accident of a couple of Japanese climbers on the north face of the Matterhorn. I did everything I could to save this guy's life. I nearly lost my own doing it. The one that fell off died in my arms, and I've never felt as sad as that summit that day. We were totally alone because we had to sleep out on the mountain with the survivor and the body. I'd signal with my lamp and shout and everything to attract people's attention. Sure enough, at dawn, a helicopter came up and took the body and the survivor when we climbed onto the summit. And we sat there, like kind of one leg in Italy, one in Switzerland, looking out on the most beautiful dawn, feeling really, really saddened that their story ended up so tragically and never anticipating that that's going to happen. Somebody's going to die in a very horrible way. That affected me enormously, and I was in my early 20s at the time as well. I knew somewhere in my history of climbing in the future there was going to be an amazing test, and that accident there on the Matterhorn was one of the things I knew I needed. That experience in order to carry on. I was better for that experience. I now know better how to deal with a situation like that next time. And sure enough, next time, well, yeah, it happened, it was me. I suppose I was in the front line, really. I was soloing to as high a level as I could go, rock climbing hard, doing Himalayan routes, now guiding as well. And ultimately I was in a situation where, well, you're constantly exposed to that danger. And looking back now, I realise it would have been just a matter of time in any case, the way I was doing it at the time. And even to some degree these days, It was a beautiful blue day. I almost thought about walking up to this hut with this client to do a little snowy peak the next day. The first one we'd ever done with my friends when we first began. The very first season, the very first route. I thought that's a perfect one to take them on. And of course I regret that situation because that day, instead of falling off a cliff, a mountain, I would have been just walking along a path to a hut. But there again, if only. So now we went to this thing, the Rifflehorn. It's a little bump of nothing at all, in view of the Matterhorn in Zermatt, not far from a mountain railway, luckily enough. And we were doing a sort of traverse of the thing, a totally the normal route where all the guides took the clients on that to more or less assess them and that. And we were just about off. In fact, another couple of metres we'd have taken the rope off on the ledge that I fell to from maybe 30 foot, 12 metres. I slid the rope a bit to let the client drop because I knew he wasn't far from this ledge, and that was it. There's a big piece of rock that just everything went, and the next minute I'm kind of crumpled on the ground, eyes open but couldn't focus, and I was really in that situation. So okay, slow down, don't rush, you might hurt something. Think it through, feel your body, be aware of things, and then let's get us out of here. And of course I got rescued from there. Helicopter. I do remember the sound of a helicopter. And then nothing for a few days. It's one of these things, as somebody said, if something like that happens to you in your life, it's almost like you've committed a crime. You're never going to forget it. And people aren't going to let you forget it either, and that's the way it is, eh? One day a rock breaks and you go crash into the ground, and okay, I survived that, and much to the bemusement of a lot of doctors and people. Waking up intensive care, wiggling my toes and fingers, thinking, great, I'm not paralysed. And then the surgeons say, well, you're not going to climb again, you're not going to do this, that and the other, and I'm going, well, hang on, you don't know me. After a few months, I do remember them saying that, all gathered around the bed and feeling this kind of burning hate of everybody, the world, my situation, myself as well, obviously. Say, no, you don't know me. I wasn't sure I'd climb again, but I was going to do something with my life, that's a fact. But I was almost like saying, fuck you lot, I'm going to be back.
Yeah, without the accident, I probably would not have ended up making a living as an artist, no. I'd have carried on painting and would have got into sculpting, would have done the environmental stuff. I don't know, it's hard to say. Would have survived my climbing, that's the question. So I'll talk about it now more and more, obviously more freely, especially if I think I can help people with it. Because sadly there's going to be bound to be more people like that, aren't there? But a lot of my life I spent, and I suppose like a lot of people recovering from some sort of traumatic accident or situation, you try and forget it. And you try and get on with a normal life, right? But I mean, it's not that easy, because there are constant reminders there, right? And all you want to be is just be normal like everybody else as far as that goes, and you can't quite ever do it, you know what I mean? Yeah, but like I said, life hasn't been easy, has it? It doesn't seem, maybe I've never wanted it to be, but it's certainly not turned out easy. And the idea of discomfort or comfort, it's relative, isn't it? You know, and like I say, I've travelled the world a lot and I've seen a lot of people much more precarious situations than I'll ever be or ever was. And it still seems to me a lot of the things I choose to do, either risking my life, going on expeditions, living as an artist, it's still a bit of a luxury, you know, all the same, you know, because I'm choosing. You know, no one's dictating my lifestyle to me. Well, this is where it all began. Burbage Valley. It's kids sneaking off from school midweek. I used to come here more or less to this spot as well, to like paint. And they were my first landscape paintings as opposed to the stuff I used to do in the town. And every time I see that, I think of the early paintings that I did and giving a very early one to my father, actually, you know, of this view, Higator, Carl's Walk and that. And being fairly proud of it. But this became the place where we used to live. We used to camp out and sleep out under boulders, and it was real kids' sort of like playground, really. It was either on Carl's Walk or Higator. On some route, I held my first fall, and I remember feeling that sense of confidence that, hey, I can actually stop someone. And we never had any gear. We just had a rope, right? We just started on these sort of little things over here because they look sort of easy angled enough. And presumably there's a belay at the top. That's kind of the main important thing for us at the time if we're going to use a rope. Otherwise, everything was soloing, you know. And then we learnt about like chocks and things, but that was much later, you know, like rocks in cracks. And I think at school, in metalwork class, we started like drilling out things. I think I remember casting in aluminium some sort of nut. We must have picked up the idea from somewhere, but I don't know where it was from. So maybe somebody wrote something, we read it. Well, I remember my parents being a bit uneasy with it. I mean, once or twice they dropped us off down at the bottom there, and off we'd go. They actually bought me my first correct rope, you know, a proper one. And they thought, well, they better have the right kit as opposed to not. No, they weren't happy with it, but they thought, well, you know, what can they do? You know, you're not going to tell them that you just nearly fell off something and nearly died, are you, when you get back? You know, you don't do that, you know. There's no point worrying them. Their big shock was that accident, and that's when it brought it home to them, just how what I'd been up to. They'd not a clue up to that point, I don't think, you know? Because I didn't communicate to anybody about things, even amongst the climbing crowd, you know, not really. I think that must have really shocked them, yeah. Would I have started without this, if I'd lived in another part of Britain? Probably, yeah. But it would have been different, I reckon, you know. Because the bold nature of gritstone climbing has helped my attitude to climbing a lot as well, I think, you know, and that's been massively important over the years, you know. You learn to solo in a place like this, I think, you know, most people do up to a degree, you know. We did it just adapted to it, like instinctively, like kids will, eh? And we never questioned it, and I didn't for a long, long time realise that I was definitely a climber now. That was it, I was done. You know, but I didn't question it for ages, I didn't think. After a while I realised, well, my lifestyle is that of a climber. I must have been certainly
1920 by then, I suppose. That would have been it. I'm fairly confirmed now. But it kept on reconfirming itself much later, that my lifestyle is always modelled around climbing, you know? And I'm not going to change at all. Even up to the accident, there was no question that I should change anything, you know? I was going to become a guide, I had to do something. And it was no problem, you know? I didn't think about it any more so than after the accident I started becoming an artist, didn't I? The important thing to me is the sacred act of creating, and as long as I'm absorbed in that and I don't think about anything else, it's great. That is a real gift to be able to do that. I was struggling with the bits of metal in, you know, you never quite got the right thing, and I'm just in my mind's eye I had an idea now what I'd like to do. I don't have the right stuff, so don't get too oriented to I've got to have the piece. Forget that. What have we got instead? Work with that instead, otherwise we're going to be stuck here, you know. I just like those accidents to happen and be guided by the materials, the work itself that's actually happening, and be very aware of the potential for adapting. And it's just like going climbing as well. There's no way I can impose my will on a piece of rock or ice or something. I've got to go with it, and it teaches me how to, you know, if I'm aware of it. Adaptation, yeah, rules. And it's strangely apt these days in the state of the earth and everything. And mankind's got to adapt and get creative just to survive now. I mean, it's like, we've always done it, we've always needed to do it, but particularly now. I was really trying to time it with that setting sun, the drama of like the sculpture's finished, boom, the flags are up. You just time it perfectly, you know, it's like rather like climbing in a way, you know, you're running out of daylight and got to get off this thing, get up and get off and all that stuff. I mean, I got a lot of pleasure out of it. It was just like, at the end it was like, wow, the release of pressure and satisfaction, just like climbing. You've done it, great. Now you can sit back and look at it and enjoy it and, you know, look at the view and all that stuff. That's to the right.
That's it, prayer flags with the Buddhists. The prayers on them are supposed to just be carried off with the wind. Eventually the flags disintegrate, all these fibres just disappear, and they're supposed to go off the prayers and do the business. And that's, above all, the most poetic thing I can think of, actually. It's so naive, it's beautifully simple, it's excellent. And there you are with the 5 symbols. Earth, water, ether, air, the mountains, fire. Yeah. So what we've got is a spiritual scrapyard. This is about the best time of day in the mountains as well, the sun going down. And a lot of times I'm just in places, well, not built up like this, but this is when you're just trying to get to sleep, you know, to go to a climb the next day. And I suppose it's fairly deep as well. Moments like that, especially when you're soloing, because they might always be your last ones as well. Last sunset, for instance, that you might ever see.
I'm massively aware that I've got such a long way to go as an artist. Even though the older you get, your physical abilities to climb, sure, they're going to go down. That's not a problem. You know, there's loads of things still to do. These days I'm looking forward to that adventure artistically as I get older. And I'm curious to see what I'm going to do in 10 years' time. And I suppose I'm going to survive. Yeah, there is still that. As long as there's adventure in the air, I'm not bothered what it is.